Excellent. Okay. Uh, Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Scott Bumstead. I'm the General Manager of Operations, and welcome to the first episode of the Fitness Industry COVID series. This will be a recurring series happening every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Today, I'm joined with Barry Elwish, the CEO of Fitness Australia, Steve Grace, the Regional Manager for Western Australia, Northern Territory and South Australia, as well as David Batty, the Regional Manager for Tasmania, Victoria and Queensland. The premise of this series is, I suppose, to bring our members as well as the broader industry and the public up to date on some of the work that's been happening behind the scenes in relation to COVID. So to kick everything off, if we could just have in the comments just where you're from, the type of business you have, just so we can, I suppose, shape the conversation to the audience. But in the meantime, Barry, I might throw over to you for a bit of a general industry update before we get into the specifics of each state.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. And I guess the most exciting news for us in the fitness sector today is that literally an hour ago, the New South Wales Deputy Premier, along with the Health Minister, announced finally that gyms in New South Wales can open from the 13th of June with group sizes or class sizes, as they are calling it, up to 10 per class to a maximum of 100 people per venue. Now this stage 2 will apply until 1 July, at which time we are hoping those class sizes will increase to 20. Between now and the 13th of June, the New South Wales Health Department will be working with Fitness Australia to work out, I guess, the nuts and bolts of what those announcements today may mean. And as much as the news has been very welcome, and it has, because of the lightness of information, it's actually opened up a whole lot of questions that our members have started asking. So we're going to try and work through all of those, not today, not this webinar, but between now and the 13th of June, so that we can give all our members and staff and the general public a complete update on when they can expect to go back to the gym in New South Wales. That's fantastic. We've been working really hard, and particularly the people on this webinar, and I'd like to acknowledge Steve and Dave and Scott particularly. These guys have been working literally 24/7, and I don't say that facetiously. I know that's the case with all health departments around Australia and with every other person who we think can influence decision making. And because of that, we've got ourselves in a situation, whereas if you think back on March the 23rd, when our gyms were closed, we were advised that they would not be opening until September or after winter. And that was completely demoralising to everybody associated with the industry. But because of the good work these guys have been doing and the advocacy of many of our members as well, I shouldn't ignore that. We've been able to get all of our states now committing to an opening date. The pressure really now is on gym providers, gym managers, gym owners to make sure they do the right thing, to make sure their staff do the right thing, to make sure the people that are attending their gyms are doing the right thing. The advice we've had from the medical authorities when we developed our protocols, which are available across Australia, and many of the states will be implementing those. The advice we've had from the medical authorities was that they do anticipate there will be outbreaks that will involve a gym or exercise facility, but provided that they are not excessive in number, that will not lead to another closure of the industry across the board. So in other words, they're being realistic. But we must be able to demonstrate as an industry, every one of us, that we are doing everything possible to make a return to gyms safe. Because ultimately, if we fail in this exercise and we are shut down again, we'll have no one to blame but ourselves. So let's all work together. Let's abide by these COVID safety protocols we developed. Let's put up with the inconvenience of stage 2, etc., so we can get to stage 3 and then back to normality. Because it's absolutely critical, as I say, that we all do our very best to ensure that safety and that people can come back feeling comfortable, wanting to come back, and being able to tell their friends and colleagues that it's safe to go back. So without any more comments, Scott, I'll hand back to you for some individual state-by-state stories.
Absolutely. While we're talking about New South Wales, Dave, I know that the announcement's only been less than an hour, but from I suppose, an operational perspective, and I suppose how businesses may want to start preparing themselves for reopening, do you have any up-to-date information, even the back-end process of who you've been discussing within New South Wales, and maybe what businesses can do in the interim period?
So from where I've been working currently is directly with New South Wales Health and the COVID response team that they have there. They're looking at our protocols as a very good basis and probably will exceed those that they require. So what I would suggest is you jump on the website to start off with, go through the Are You COVID Ready program, have a look through that, and then start adjusting according to that. But we're sitting at the moment with the 10 people per class. That was also something that started quite early with the restaurant scene, that it was going to be 10 people, and it moved quite quickly from that number and accelerated. So we've got to be ready for more than just those 10 people as well. So try to keep a little bit of an open mind on that side, because we're going to keep on lobbying on those numbers as well.
And just on that issue, David, the definition of what constitutes a class, a room or a space of those 10 people is to be negotiated between now and the 13th of June.
Most definitely. So it could be that they may allow temporary barriers, they may allow a lot of things to actually allow us a lot more people in those facilities. We may have to give a little ground to get a little ground on that with distancing and things like that, but we will trying to push hard to try to increase those numbers to something much more usable for the larger fitness community.
Excellent. Thanks, Dave. While I have the floor, I might just provide a bit of an update on Queensland. So, look, Queensland, I suppose, have approached the reopening and the COVID safe plans from a very systematic, well thought out process, in my opinion. What they've released is a roadmap that had asterisks all over it. So everyone from Queensland would have seen that there was an asterisk besides gyms where they were talking about having 20 people per venue. So as it currently stands, Queensland, all businesses, regardless of the type of service or facility that it's operating, is 20 people per venue. The COVID safe plan that was submitted last week to the sport department up in Queensland has been going back and forth between Fitness Australia, the sport department, as well as the health department. The initial review of the health department have come back with some non-negotiables that we have readapted, put together, contextualized for the fitness industry across, unsupervised gym, big box gyms, PT studios, outdoor training, personal training, all encompassing, put that back. The Queensland Health Department are happy with that. The Sport Department are happy with that. And now that's gone up to the Chief Health Officer for endorsement. Now, I've been told that that will hopefully happen today. So we have a opportunity, potentially within sort of a 24 to 48 hours, to have the COVID safe plan increased or endorsed, and then from there we'll be in a position where instead of going 20 per venue, we may be able to go 20 per area, where we have some of the larger gyms have the ability to segregate areas with movable barriers to have people book in. So in a big gym, you might have 3 or 4 groups of 20 that are utilising those facilities in order to increase those total venue caps. I've just had a question. Any update on the 24 access in Queensland? Within Queensland, the health department during stage 2 have come back with a hard no. So they're writing that into legislation that any facility across anything in stage 2 is going to have to be supervised. So there will be no 24-hour unmanned access during stage 2 in Queensland. There will need to be someone present to ensure hygiene and social distancing that take place. If there's no more questions for that, Steve, I might throw over to you to talk about Western Australia. So any questions in Western Australia, if we could type them in now, and Steve might be able to respond to those.
Thanks, Scotty. WA have obviously announced that they will be going into their next stage, so stage 3 of their easing of restrictions. That will be happening on the 6th, Saturday the 6th, which is really exciting. They've gone quite broad with opening up access to gyms. So it's 100 people per room and 300 people capacity limit per venue. There's no restrictions on the equipment, which there was previously, or there currently is as I'm speaking now. There's no restrictions when it comes to the classes only approach. So free use of gyms is going to be back as of Saturday, which is really good. And they've even lowered the social distancing requirement to 2 square metres per person as opposed to 4. The only, I suppose, negative to all of this from WA has been that they are requiring, similar to Queensland, staffed supervision at all times. So what that means is that your 24-hour gyms with unstaffed access, they will be limited. So there has to be a staff member there. Now, we are currently in the process of, again, putting in another proposal. This will be our 3rd proposal to have 24-hour gyms able to be operating unstaffed. It'll be a number of extra conditions, so things like an increase in the square meterage, so 10 meters squared per person. Each 24-hour facility would have to have the capacity to lock their doors once they get to a limit of possibly 10 or 20 people, and also contact tracing and a bunch of other protocols that we're proposing as well. As I said, this has been, similar proposals have been put to the DPC and also WA Health, and they've again come back similar to Queensland and said that they're concerned about unstaffed access. They've heard our proposals and unfortunately they've knocked those back. So we'll try again and see if we can have some success there. On another positive for WA, the Premier did mention in his press conference that this particular stage would only be for 3 weeks. So stage 4 would be happening, all things going well, quite quickly after that. So it might only be a short space of time, keeping in mind as well that they've already brought forward the easing of restrictions in both stage 1 and stage 2 by around a week or more. That 3-week estimate might even be shorter. So slowly getting back to some sort of normal when it comes to WA. Scotty, any questions coming through specific there?
Not for WA at the moment, Steve. While you're going, do you want to give an update on South Australia? Seems like there's some decent movement there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So SA obviously opened their gyms yesterday, which is fantastic. So a lot of people excited to get back into the gym, both owners and members. They have obviously gone with a 20 people per room limit and 80 people per venue as a capacity. So if you are in a larger facility and you have multiple rooms, then obviously your capacity goes up. They are limiting classes to 10 people only. Now, the issue or the feedback that we're getting from both SA Health and SAPOL as well is that they are concerned about groups of people or large-ish groups of people arriving and leaving at the same time, which is what can occur when classes are offered. So again, similar to the WA situation, we are continuing to propose some alternatives to expand that number for classes. Another point that I'll mention with South Australia is that temporary walls have been discussed at length and what constitutes a temporary wall. So if you have a very, very large space, as a lot of gyms do, can I divide it in half or in quarters with the social distancing protocols still in place and then increase my venue's capacity? Short answer is yes, you can. But you need to have a look at the directions in regards to temporary walls. There's some new directions on the FAQ document, which is published on the sa.gov.au website. So if you log on to that, it was only updated yesterday and it has some details about what constitutes a temporary wall. If you meet those requirements and you think that it's viable for you to put up a temporary wall, then you will be able to do so. Again, keeping in mind that it may only be 3 weeks or so until we go into the next stage. So my recommendation would not be to spend an exorbitant amount of money trying to get temporary walls up, but if you think it is achievable and viable financially, then it is an option.
Excellent. Thanks, Steve. We might move on to Victoria. Dave, there's a couple of questions coming through just as you're providing your update. 24-hour gyms in Victoria, any reference there? As well as in Vic, large group fitness studios, is it 20 people or 10? And what happens if you have a large studio of say 450 plus square meters? Does that change the ratios or anything like that?
So as it stands, there's been a panel formed and their first sitting of the panel was today, which is all government bodies of Victorian Health, Victorian Sport and Recreation and Sport. Though their first meeting was today at lunchtime, and then I'll be receiving a couple of bylines from that over the next couple of hours, which will tell us what they're looking at, and then it's all negotiable from there. So we're really still pushing that the 10 in the class and the 20 per venue probably won't work if there are set totals. We're looking at ways to help facilitate that with things like the temporary barriers and other bits and pieces. But as it stands, there is no news on how that's going to work. It would all be just guesswork from me saying it right now, but there's a lot of things that we're putting forward. 24/7 hasn't been mentioned as yet. So that's something that they haven't even brought up as an issue at this stage. So I'll wait to hear about that. Hopefully I'll have more news within the next 2 or 3 days, because this is when they're actually formulating a lot of these plans, is from now, not necessarily formulated prior. So none of the plans are set in stone for Victoria yet. They're really formulating them as we go.
Excellent. Thanks, Dave. And while I suppose you're talking, if you can provide a bit of an update on ACT, specifically around, there was some really strict definitions around what is a supervised open gym versus what is a unsupervised open gym. If you could explain those ones.
So the definitions were quite interesting. To start out with, ACT came out with classes only as their mandate, and after a lot of to and fro, we've been able to get them to also accept open gym floor as a part of that. But everything needed to be supervised. So each space needed their own person to supervise that area to ensure that the social distancing and all the cleaning is up to standard. So that would push the idea of any unmanned facilities completely off the radar in the ACT. Each section, so each class needed to have somebody supervising. So if you're going to separate your floors in the ACT, you actually had to have a single person to each area so that they're supervising that area. So it's a really interesting way to look at the problem. We're still in discussions with them, and hopefully I've got a meeting with the Chief of Health down there on Thursday. So I'm hoping to get more around what they're looking at for the future as well. But as it stands, it's pretty set in stone for the ACT.
Any movement on 24 hours in the ACT?
No movement at the moment. There's definitely they're definitely not looking at it under this stage, and this stage is looking like it's only going to be a couple of weeks anyway. So in 2 weeks, I believe it is, they're doing another revisit to see if they can change or extend those restrictions, and we'll be lobbying pretty hard to have them eased even further.
Excellent. Gracie, I might go back to you. I know the Northern Territory is charging ahead, but any update or anything on the radar that you want to flag?
So the NT is essentially operating almost business as usual, apart from the obvious social distancing and hygiene requirements. There is a 2-hour limit on people's access to the gym during this stage. It's unclear whether that will be removed in the next stage, which is coming up. But it's, Northern Territory are as close as any other state or territory to being back to normal operations. I did have a question from someone up in the Northern Territory around boxing and whether they were able to do partnered boxing, so pad holding and that type of thing. There's some information regarding obviously the 1.5 metre distancing requirement. So that's the first thing that I'll mention. So maintaining 1.5 metres is suggested in the Northern Territory, as it is in all other states. There's a little bit more detail where if you need to go within 1.5 metres and you're facing someone, they're suggesting that you limit your time doing that, obviously, because if you're facing someone, there's more risk of the transfer of infection. And then I suppose if you consider boxing, a situation where obviously you're going to be panting and facing someone and being within 1.5 square metres, the logic and common sense would tell you that that might not be the best option at this time. Strictly speaking, by the rules, you may be able to do it. But keep in mind that we're not just here to go by, I can and I can't do this and find loopholes, for lack of a better word. We also have a responsibility to our members and to the public and our staff to obviously maintain their safety. So my strong suggestion would be that pad work at the moment wouldn't be appropriate, but I will leave that to individuals to make a call based on the information that we have available.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. And look, the last state would be Tasmania. Dave, I know there was a media release a couple of hours ago, which may have some influence moving forward.
Sorry, I didn't hear that one, Scott.
Tasmania, an update down in Tasmania. I know there was a media release just recently within a couple of hours. Not sure if you had a chance to digest that as of yet.
Haven't had a chance to go over it yet. So I've been stuck to my head in New South Wales at the moment. So if you've got any idea of what it said, that'd be grand.
I don't at this stage, but I suppose any update in terms of where they're currently at or where stage 2 may sit?
Okay, stage 2 was originally due to roll out as of the 15th. I believe they've brought it forward by a week, from my understanding. They're looking at opening up gyms for 20 people and 10 for classes, similar to the Victorian model. And they're still looking at COVID safe plans as an option to extend those numbers. We're unsure where they're sitting at the moment. And that's about as much as I've got from Tasmania, because they haven't been as communicative and chatting quite as much as I'd like. But we're getting there now. We've got the right people in conversation with us. We submitted our COVID safe plan to them on last Thursday after their request, and they're now digesting that and seeing where they can show that can work in Tasmania going forward.
Excellent. All right. I've just had a few questions come through from different states. So Dave, with you, can you use a large footy club veranda for wet weather training for an outdoor boot camp?
This is a borderline question. So they've defined a structure as a roof and permanent or non-permanent walls. If you have a look at it, it has 3 edges to it, probably not. If it has only the one wall as a veranda, it's probably going to be acceptable. So from what they're saying to me, that seems fine. And they're saying there's going to be a common sense approach attached to this. So if they're out in the open and they're breathing fresh air and there's a lot of breeze coming past it and there's not that contained space, they're not as concerned. But if it goes into a contained space, that's when they're really quite worried. So I'd say that would be acceptable from where we sit currently.
Excellent. Thanks. Okay, Barry, I'm going to throw over to you, I suppose, think big picture with, maybe the federal and I suppose where the fitness industry can move in order to prevent, I suppose, rapid shutdown should a COVID 2022 pop up at some stage, and I suppose how we can prevent, rapid shutdown and then painful reopening periods. Is there anything we can do as an industry? I think you're on mute.
Absolutely, Scott. So I guess the first thing is we've got to get through COVID-19 first, and that was what I was alluding to in my opening comments about the importance of everyone doing the right thing. But once we get through this, and we will obviously, the challenge for Fitness Australia on behalf of the sector and the sector itself, in my view, is that we have to move away from where we are currently categorised by economists, government policy makers, decision makers, etc. To be lumped together with cafes, bars, hotels, restaurants, etc. is not a very productive place for us to be, because we get dragged into all of the safety measures that need to be applied to them, in the next COVID or the next national emergency, whatever it may be. And we can absolutely guarantee there'll be more national emergencies, whether they are pandemics or whatever, it doesn't matter. But we need to use this opportunity to reposition the sector closer to allied health, closer to being classified as an essential service, which I believe we should be, in the future, so that when we are faced, when the government is faced with decisions about what is an essential service, what can we close down, what can we afford not to close down, the fitness sector actually comes into consideration, is not dismissed straight away as being just some other retail business, but is an activity which has got a critical role to play in the community's physical and mental health and well-being. So the challenge for us as a sector is to move closer to the allied health. Now, this is not going to be any easy path, as I alluded to at the Filex a few weeks back, but it can be achieved if we all work together, and I guess, for want of a pitch at the moment, through a stronger and unified fitness association, that being Fitness Australia. So that's the challenge. That would be the strategic direction that I believe this organisation should be trying to take the sector with it. That may not be shared by some of the viewers or some of the players, but at the end of the day, we have to shed ourselves of the images and perceptions that have existed for a long time in this community about what fitness and gyms look like. If that means we have to, I guess, actively get rid of some of the cowboys that operate in our sector, so be it. But at the end of the day, we must get ourselves closer to where we belong to be, where we rightfully should be, and that is part of the allied health sector. So that's the challenge. If we're successful in that, it'll take 1 or 2 years. If we're successful, next time this comes around, we'll be in a much better place to influence decision-making and influence, I guess, future policy, etc. So that's the challenge for all of us, Scott.
Yeah, and I'd reiterate that the sector's in a prime position. So with these engagements being taking place with sport departments as well as health departments, the level of education and now understanding that these ministers down to their departments have for this industry is at its absolute all-time high. So in certain states, we've had conversations where we've been directly lubbed with sport, and the assumption was that, it's going to the gym's the equivalent of playing a game of AFL, where there's contact, there's poor hygienes, there's no clinical practices that take place. So the next few weeks and how the industry responds as we start to reopen is going to be absolutely critical in order taking that next step in order to move ourselves close to allied health. So
Scott, just so the viewers don't think that we're having a lend of ourselves here and whistling in the dark, Steve and I are on a Zoom call a week ago, I think, Steve, with the Minister for Sport in Western Australia. And he made the comment completely unsolicited that he'd had a meeting with the other sports ministers around Australia under the auspices of the Federal Sports Minister, Richard Colbeck. And Richard had been extolling the role that Fitness Australia was playing at the moment and the potential role that Fitness Australia can play moving forward in achieving and implementing the GAPA program. And the Minister, Mick Murray from WA, said to Steve and I, you guys should take some pleasure in the fact that you are being highly regarded at the moment in government circles, in the key government circles. Now, that's lovely for now, fantastic, but we need to make sure we leverage that and not let that, I guess, positive perception of us as an association and us as an industry, we can't let that fall back to where it was pre-COVID, which was only 3 months ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I just had a few more questions come through in relation to Queensland. So can you please confirm the square metre per person for Queensland Cubs under the COVID safe plan? Now, I need to stress that this plan has not been signed off by the Chief Health Officer. It is under her review currently. But in that proposal, after feedback from both the sport department as well as the health department, that'll be broken down into 1 person per 7 square metres. Now, pending the endorsement, that's what it'll go through per breaking down of those areas. But I need to flag, and we need to understand that that is under review and it has not been endorsed as of yet. We're hoping we'll know that either later today or early tomorrow, in which case we'll release across socials, plus be in contact with all of our business and our members up in Queensland. Okay, if we don't have any more questions come through, I might just throw it open to Steve, Dave, Barry. Any final comments or anything else we would like to raise?
There's a question, Scotty, from a member in South Australia around any time limits for for gyms or for members within South Australia. If you go through and complete the COVID safety plan in South Australia, which you need to do before you open, there's further information in there, and within that, it suggests that there should be a 2-hour limit, so similar to what they've done in the Northern Territory. Now, the terminology, as I said, is a suggestion. Whether it's going to be something that is enforced or not, we're unsure. That's down to SAPOL. But anything that is suggested, as I alluded to before, we would strongly encourage our members to adhere to those suggestions, because they are there for a reason. They're not just there for being a pain in the backside. They're there to protect you as a business owner, but also your members and the public as well. So short answer, 2 hours in South Australia.
Thanks, Steve. The other critical issue that we also need to start talking about is with these COVID safe plans with different industries. Now, we have a fitness COVID safe plan, but there are facilities out there that are running pools, childcare. So there will be multiple COVID safe plans. So if you run say a leisure centre that has, outdoor training, indoor training, creche, 50-metre pool that's indoors, and then a 50-metre pool that's outdoors, you'll need to be across all the relevant COVID safety plans and where they apply. So you can't just necessarily take the fitness one or the aquatic one and then just assume that covers you entirely. There are going to be multiple for each one of those areas, which is really, really critical and sort of forms part of that forward planning. Got a few more questions coming through. Can you have 20 people per space, e.g. 20 people in the gym and 20 people in the group fitness room? So currently, as the Chief Health Officer is reviewing the COVID safe plan, the 20 people per cap as it currently stands is per venue. So that's regardless of open gym or group fitness. The COVID safe plan that's under review will move that to 20 per room or per area. So as soon as that's signed off and that's endorsed, that's when we'll be able to flick to 20 per area, which would include group fitness rooms themselves. Dave, one for you. In Victoria, any word on when Victoria will release a COVID safe plan document to the Vic studios to be ready by the 22nd of June?
So the panel's meeting today to start formulating these plans. So no idea of exactly, they're looking with at least 1 week's notice is the way that they've put it. If I can get them and convince them that the date's too far away and we can pull the date earlier, it may be a shorter notice period around that. But as it stands, they'll want that out at least 1 week prior.
Excellent, thanks, Dave. Steve, any information in Western Australia about a 2-hour limit?
No, nothing about a 2-hour limit for stage 3. I assume that they're asking about stage 3 and not the current stage 2. The only, or the main information that we have available to us is the 100 person per room and 300 capacity, and then the limit as it stands on unstaffed access. So it needs to be staffed. So more information will obviously be coming as we get closer to Saturday. And all that information will be available on the wa.gov.au website. Or just send me an email and ask me, give me a call.
Rightio. Dave, bit of a curly one here for Victoria. So local council is not acknowledging numbers allowed by the state government. What are your recommendations on that, to follow local council or to abide by state government?
You have to abide by local council. They can actually issue you penalties around use of their space, because the space is under their jurisdiction and under their control. Though you won't get the COVID penalties that the police are issuing, you can still get fined for improper use, and then they can remove your ability to use those spaces. So I would say adhere to that. I know Port Phillip has definitely said that they're going with 15 people rather than 20. And they've set that as a max for ongoing during this COVID time. That they've had a whole heap of arguments to and fro, but this is where they're set at. So I would say stick to what the council says, keep yourself out of trouble, and then moving forward, see where they sit later on.
Excellent. Thanks, Dave. Okay, so with no more questions coming through, Barry, I might throw it to you for some closing remarks.
Yeah, okay, so just want to thank all those members of the association, and also non-members actually, who've been in communication with all of us over the last 3 or 4 weeks, expressing their support for what we're trying to do on their behalf, also expressing their frustrations quite clearly and understandably. I'd like to thank all of those members who have been backing us in, thank them for their patience, thank them for their, I guess, forbearance and consideration, and I guess understanding of trying to deal with 7 different state governments and then 7 different governments, multiple departments in every government. It's like really literally herding cats. It's been very, very problematic, trying to know who the right person to go to is. We've been engaging at multiple levels. So I've been dealing with Director Generals, Ministers and so on. Steve and Dave have been dealing with health managers and so on, and Scott across the board with DGs and so on as well. So we've been trying to, I guess, adopt a multi-level approach. Just as we share your frustration, guys, it's been incredibly demoralising at times to hear some of the feedback we've been getting, but we are making progress. And as I said in the opening comments, when this all blew up on March the 23rd, we were told that we wouldn't be open until after winter or September. Well, now, at long last, every state has given us a timeline. So we have got some good progress. Thank you for your consideration. Thank you for your patience. And, you know, please keep advocating. Please keep contacting your local member, whatever it is, and tell them to listen to what Fitness Australia is saying, because what we're saying is what you're telling us. So thanks so much, guys, and look forward to next week.
Thanks, Barry. So just to confirm, this is a series. So Barry will be back with potentially another member of Fitness Australia or another stakeholder to discuss a different topic next Tuesday at 1 p.m. Thanks for your time, guys.